last 2 or 3 decades, but also including events from the early 1900s, the 1800s, and even before. When I counted up the entries, there are 31 entries before 1800, 40 in the 19th century itself. The most entries for any particular year is 8 in 1990, the year of Margaret Thatcher's defenestration and the First Gulf War. There are 7 in 1963, 1967 and 1981. Since World War II, there are only 4 years in which there are no entries in this book: 1953, 1959, 2004 and 2006. I also thought it would be interesting to see if there was an equal share of events for the 7 days of the week. There wasn't. Unsurprisingly, the fewest entries are on Saturdays, 35, and Sundays, 29. 42 events took place on Mondays, and Tuesday proved to be the most eventful day, with 73 events, just ahead of Thursdays with 71. On Wednesdays there were 56 events, and Friday 60. This book is not meant to encompass a complete political history of the last 1,000 or even 200 years. What I hope it achieves is for your interest in different subjects to be piqued, and to encourage you to read more widely about events that I can only briefly describe. My original intent was for this book to be primarily aimed at people with a mild but not obsessive interest in current affairs and our political history. However, it soon became clear that it ought to appeal to political geeks too, people like me. When I started writing, I imagined that I would be able to write about a third of the entries off the top of my head, with no research. That proved not to be the case. In the end, I probably only wrote about 10 of the entries straight off the bat. I discovered things I didn't know even when writing about contemporary events with which I'm very familiar. I would like to thank the following friends and colleagues who helped in the research and drafting process for this book: Katrina Beck, Mark Fox, Corey Froggatt, Robbie Hawkins, Matthew Hulbert, Sarah McKinley and Jacob Sveda have gone way beyond the call of duty, but I must make particular mention also of Noah Keat and Robert Waller. Noah is a politics student and devout listener to my For the Many podcast, and has spent hours and hours helping me with both the research and drafting of many of the entries you've read. I honestly could not have delivered this book on time without him. He has a fine future ahead of him in the politics and journalism world. I first got to know Robert Waller around 20 years ago when I was running Politico's bookstore in Westminster. He was the inventor and co-editor of the Almanac of British Politics. As a history and politics teacher, his intimate knowledge of British history and politics is, I think, unsurpassed. He has corrected many errors as well as contributed to the drafting of many of the political stories and events mentioned in the book. He's contributed to my books, The Prime Ministers and the Presidents, and I could not be more grateful for his work in assisting me with on this day. Inevitably, there will be a few factual errors which the eagle-eyed among you will spot, and I take full responsibility. Please do email me and let me know so corrections can be made for reprints or the paperback edition. info@iandale.com. Iain Dale, Tunbridge Wells, June 2022. January. Monday the 1st of January 1973. Britain joins the European Economic Community. Today, Britain became a member of the European Economic Community, the EEC, as it was then called, after 2 previous attempts to join the Common Market in 1963 and 1967 were vetoed by the French President Charles de Gaulle. The Conservative Party's 1970 manifesto stated that it would be in the long-term interest of the British people for Britain to join the European Economic Community, making it one of their key pledges. Sir Edward Heath, the then Prime Minister, and behind the accession, described the decision to join the bloc as very moving and at an EEC entry celebration banquet said, "What we're building is a community whose scope will gradually extend until it virtually covers the whole field of collective human endeavour." Harold Wilson, who was the leader of the opposition at the time, criticised the conditions agreed by Heath as utterly crippling, and said that the decision to join the EEC was done without the support of the British people. Almost a year earlier, on the 22nd of January 1972,